For an evil galaxy-spanning empire, the villains in Star Wars have an amazing track record of embarrassing themselves. We can talk about the small teams of Hicks in hand-me-down fighters, blowing up multi-trillion credit Death Stars, or egotistical Sith betraying their own cause in another episode. Today, we need to talk about the whole white plastic armoured elephant in the room, the galactic embarrassment of an army called the Imperial Stormtroopers. Let's just take a minute to look at these guys. White plastic head-to-toe armour is hardly a practical look. Fortunately for the Stormies, planets in the Star Wars galaxy usually have one biome, so at least on snow planets like Hoth, they'll have decent camouflage. But in the jungles of Endor, the swamps of Felucia, or the sands of Jakku, that white bucket armour just makes Imperial troops very easy targets. Their vehicles are designed much like their armour, big on visual spectacle and low on practicality, skipping the practical hover tanks to invest in spindly-legged walking robots that look awesome but fall way too easily to rebel shenanigans. A popular fan theory says Stormtrooper armour wasn't intended to protect the wearer at all, and that it mainly existed to dehumanize the anonymous troopers, giving them all the same black-eyed death's head white helmet. A Stormtrooper helmet includes tinted lenses and breath filters, which may be considered safety features, but more likely just serve to create further barriers between the trooper inside and the people that the trooper is oppressing. Clearly, faceless armies have been a favourite of Emperor Palpatine, since he built both a droid army and an army of identical clones during his rise to power, and then patterned his Stormtroopers after the anonymous clones once the Empire rose. Even in the Rebellion years, after most veteran clones had been retired and Stormtroopers recruited from among the ranks of the galactic populace, they kept that faceless white helmet look and mechanically distorted voice. Fifth most embarrassing moment: Tattooine Jedi mind trick. The fifth most embarrassing time the Stormtroopers dropped the ball was during their first speaking appearance in the Star Wars saga, at the checkpoint guarding entry to Mos Eisley City. The troopers were deployed from Vader's orbiting Star Destroyer for one mission: to locate and retrieve a group of droids that ejected from the rebel blockade runner Tantive 4 during the capture of Princess Leia over Tattooine. The very battle that opens the movie is the sole reason the Stormtroopers are deployed on a dirty backwater outer rim world like Tattooine, so you'd think they'd take this job seriously. When Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker roll up to the Mos Eisley checkpoint with two very visible droids seated in their speeder, they should set off every red flag and alarm the Imperials have. Grubby strangers wandering into one of their planet's only port cities just a day after the refugee droids vanished, and after the Stormtroopers had tortured Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, and the Jawas who sold them the droids. One, a gangly youth matching the loose description of any of Anchorhead or visitor to Lars farm, could have given Imperial authorities during or after the uncle and aunt killing. Yet the Stormtroopers react to this vehicle with absolute workaday boredom. Obi-Wan makes his first conspicuous use of the Force powers on screen. Well, depending on how you feel about his crate dragon scream to chase off the Sand People a few scenes prior, when he waves a hand and tells the Stormtrooper, "These aren't the droids you're looking for. We can go about our business. Move along." And the trooper, of course, faithfully mirrors Obi-Wan's words, waving them through the checkpoint without so much as a sensor sweep or routine ID check. We know from Kenobi and Solo that the Empire is already using chain codes to identify and track citizens by this point, even as far as the Outer Rim, yet the troopers don't even ask for or record this most basic information about the human travelers. As Obi-Wan tells Luke in a later scene, Force persuasion works on the weak-minded and those easily led astray. A few other scenes suggest that the beings of strong will, such as Jabba the Hutt, or those with innate Force resistance such as Watto the Toydarian, can easily shake off the Jedi mind trick. So likely, if the Empire hired people with strong wills and independent thinking, they would have been focused enough on their job to ignore Obi-Wan's conjuring and investigate the droids, ending the saga with an Imperial win right there. Fourth most embarrassing moment: Death Star escape. The next great embarrassment came the next time the Stormtroopers were asked to do a basic part of their job to stop those prisoners from escaping. Sun Tzu's classic, The Art of War, teaches that the most difficult battle is the one in which you are unprepared, and your enemy is prepared, and you do not know the ground you fight on, but the enemy knows it well. So according to that doctrine, Luke's bumbling rescue party and recovering prisoner Leia should be faced by an extremely difficult strategic situation as they try to escape the Death Star. The Imperials have cameras and scanners, lockable blast doors, computer-controlled environmental systems. In fact, they have total control over every square inch of space within the Death Star. And yet, the fumbling rebels managed to use their combat mechanic droid to hack the computers of this secret military base and repeatedly overcome superior Stormtrooper forces in a series of cowboy gunfights. Princess Leia at one point grows frustrated, seizes an E-11 blaster rifle, and opens up from the hip, not even sighting her shots, and manages to drop a handful of troopers and send the rest of the squad for cover. Luke, the farm boy, and Han, the small-time crook, also outshoot the Imperials at every turn. I'm pretty pretty sure if the camera zoomed in closely on one of those E11 rifles, you'd see a big "Made by G.I. Joe" logo on the side. Do they actually fire blaster bolts, or just colourful Pink Floyd laser light shows for the heroes to dance through while slaughtering Imperials? The standout humiliation for the boys in white during this sequence comes when a desperate hand starts charging down the corridor, yelling and squeezing off a few pot shots into the air. A whole squad of troopers flees at a run before him, not one of them turning to investigate or taking cover, or even having the genius idea to fire back behind them on the run. Eventually, the troopers run into a ready room full of their comrades and finally take back the momentum and set Han on the run. But the fact that a single maniac running and hollering like a Hollywood cowboy can put the Empire's elite, with home turf advantage, scrambling on their heels like week 1 recruits is a testament to the garbage quality of the Empire's training and discipline among their troops. Third biggest embarrassment, Kenobi truck scene. The yellow speeder truck scene in Kenobi is the third biggest embarrassment for the Stormtrooper Corps. In the scene, a bedraggled Obi-Wan is leading a toddler, Leia Organa, through the fields on a remote agricultural world and trying to hide from Imperial forces. They arrived at a remote automated cargo port by stowing away on board a robotic cargo ship piloted by a droid intelligence. Once planetside, Obi-Wan grew paranoid and did not want to wait at the scheduled rendezvous point for the contact he was promised. Instead, he took Leia away from the site, and the toddler got the bright idea to hitchhike for a ride with a random stranger in his big yellow land speeder truck. Freck, voiced by Scrub star Zach Braff, chatted up the pair for a while, using friendly small talk to feel out their intentions. The mole-like alien, who revealed himself to be a hardcore Imperial patriot, hoping to make the galaxy great again, stopped his truck for a second band of hitchhikers, this time a small team of 4 stormtroopers, whose transport broke down out in the fields. Trapped in the back of a flatbed truck together, the stormtroopers ask Obi-Wan and the toddler Leia a few desultory questions. Obi-Wan is incredibly flustered during the scene, letting the child take the lead in the conversation and stumbling into several obvious verbal mistakes, one of which a stormtrooper even remarks on when he calls the child princess by the wrong name for their cover story. Never in a scene do we see evidence of Obi-Wan making use of his trademark Jedi mind trick technique, likely because he has been concealing his powers for years to hide from the Inquisitators. But honestly, he doesn't even need the Force to con these gullible troopers, who quiet their suspicions and settle in for a relaxed ride with the sketchy off-worlders. Our heroes do get captured briefly when Feck, the space redneck patriot, stops at a stormtrooper checkpoint and reports his suspicions about the travelers that the other stormtroopers were ready to ignore. And what happens then? The Imperials have Leia hostage at gunpoint and Obi-Wan dead to rights, and just as they surrender, a treacherous Imperial officer who is actually a Jedi sympathizer in disguise blows away the last handful of Imperial troops herself with a low-powered officer's sidearm. Even when the stormtroopers get the danger pointed out directly by Freck and literally have the heroes hostage at gunpoint, the boys in white fail to make the capture. Ouch. Second biggest embarrassment, scout troopers with Grogu. On The Mandalorian, the stormtroopers made the biggest mistake of their entire career as a military outfit, as well as committing the most unforgivable Star Wars sin in the eyes of the fandom. They beat up poor little Grogu. Before I really dig into the juicy, embarrassing meat of the scene, I want to just repeat that these absolute peanuts thought a bright idea would be to kick around Grogu, Baby Yoda himself, the cutest mascot in franchise history, and a Wonder Kid space wizard whose dad-bad arsery makes Boba Fett look like a pensioner by comparison. The scout troopers had orders to retrieve the package, a messenger bag containing one little green Grogu guy, from Moff Gideon, intact and undisturbed. In fact, as the board troopers chit-chat in a very undisciplined way for soldiers on duty and in possession of a mission-critical asset, they argue about even opening the bag to peek at Grogu. Clearly they are aware that he is a high-value asset, yet they smack and kick him around. Sheer grade A Imperial genius on display there, folks. But the grievous baby space wizard gremlin abuse is not the dumbest moment for the boys in white in this scene. They actually manage to rub their own noses even deeper into the night soil when they start taking target practice pot shots at a small clump of scrub bush. Shot after shot, at a range of less than 10 meters, sitting still and wearing helmets with vision enhancements, and the two troopers don't come close to hitting the plant. The scene really reinforces the combat incompetence that we see from the stormtroopers so often during the original trilogy of films, when they fire rainstorms of blaster bolts at our heroes, and maybe once per movie clip, someone in the shoulder or bum. Number 1 embarrassing stormtrooper moment, the Battle of Endor. Okay folks, if you've ever seen the original Star Wars trilogy, then you've been waiting through this whole video to hear this debacle come up, and here it is at the top of the heap. In some of the other scenes, we saw stormtroopers bungle their basic combat duties and display aim and fire discipline that would make even a Jawa hide its face in shame. Well, hide it more. We saw their lack of training, lack of individuality, lack of curiosity, and the overall lack of competence. And we saw some pretty epic lapses in judgment too. But the Battle of Endor is one of the most humiliating asymmetrical underdog victories in the history of space combat. No other battle in history of the Star Wars universe, from the golden age of the Sith through the Old Republic or the entire Rebellion era, had quite the asymmetrical odds as Endor pitting the quarter-constructed Death Star 2, the meaty portion of the Imperial fleet, what Palpatine describes as a full legion of his best troops, and a whole bunch of Imperial walkers against a Rebel fleet, maybe 24 strong, a dozen or so ground commandos, and our heroes. Every single factor in the Battle of Endor was against the Rebellion. The system was Imperial territory, with dug-in defences, a planetary shield generator mirroring the Rebels' own tactics on Hoth, and a defensive fleet. The ground commando raid tipped off the Imperials that the Rebel attack thanks to Darth Vader's Force connection with his son, Luke Skywalker, on board the Rebel commando shuttle. The prepared Imperial forces delayed Han and Leia's commando force and kept them from dropping the Death Star 2's shields before the Rebel fleet's arrival, meaning that instead of a swift hit-and-fade attack as the Rebels planned for, their fleet was drawn into a lengthy slugging match with the pride of the Imperial fleet until the ground forces could drop the shield and enable a desperate snubfighter assault on the Death Star's core. It is fair to say that the entire battle hinged on the ground conflict over the shield generator bunker. The Stormtroopers were prepared and waiting in ambush, with a bunch of huge armoured walkers with heavy weapons and fancy sensors, and the Rebels were able to defeat them with the help of a bunch of plucky local teddy bears armed with Stone Age spears, bows and big game hunting traps. The Ewok defeat of the Emperor's finest troops has got to be the single greatest miracle in the original trilogy, the one-in-a-million moment that begged us to suspend our skepticism and believe that the Force somehow blessed the virtuous teddies with the strength, aim and tactical acumen to kill hundreds of armoured space commandos and their giant walking tanks. Whether they're bonking their head on a doorframe, spraying charge clip after charge clip of blaster bolts into the empty air around a Rebel standing 6 meters away calmly sipping a cuppa, or kicking cute mascots and invoking the rage of a robot nanny from hell, the Imperial Stormtroopers do a truly incredible job of parodying all the negative aspects of a totalitarian imperialist occupying army, and the quality of people who punch their time card and put on a scary white helmet. Until next time, as always, may the Force be with you.